Welcome to A Woman's Heart. I know that we are all going to be in for a very special treat. Today we have Heather Kaufman with us as we continue our summer reading series. And welcome to A Woman's Heart, Heather Kaufman.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lisa. It's a joy to be here.
You are very welcome. And as I mentioned before, I have seen a couple of your books here and there, and then I've had other books that I had to read. But this time I had the excuse that I had to read your book because it's work. It's work. So I had to read it. And I was very happy to do that. And I did not want to put the book down. I just wanted to keep reading and not do any other work
I
until I
love
got to the end of the
that.
story.
I feel like that's a great compliment. They are sucked away and you lose track of time. That's such a compliment. So,
Yes,
so
it
glad to hear
is.
that.
Yes. Well, and before we get more into the book, which is also part of a series, I would love to get to know you a little better and have my audience get to know you a little better. So tell us a little bit about yourself and something fun that isn't normally in your bio.
Yes. So my name's Heather Kaufman. I am married to my husband, Andrew. It will be actually 15 years this year, which is, thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. We have three kiddos who are 10, 7, and almost 5. So life is very
Yes.
full and busy. They'll all be in elementary school next year, which is just crazy. So I feel like I'm kind of entering my youngest just graduated preschool. So it's just kind of, whew, it's just been a whirlwind
I
and
know.
emotional
Blink and then
and
they're graduating again, and you blink
yeah,
and they're married.
I know. So we have three kids. We live in the St. Louis area,
Okay.
and we have for our whole married life. Um, let's see what else about me. I've always loved to read and write. I have been writing since I was like 6 years old. And something fun about me that is not on my bio is actually I grew up homeschooled, and I am the oldest of 6. So, yeah, I think not a lot of people maybe know
Oh.
that. So, I am the oldest of 6 kids and grew up homeschooled. So, I very much have been taking care of kids for a long time.
Yes, you have. If you're the
Love
oldest.
kids. Yes. Built-in babysitter. So,
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, and you mentioned that you've been writing since you were 6. I suspect you weren't published at the age of 8. How did that writing journey come along? Because some people, even though they've always loved to write and they've always wanted to be a writer, they maybe had to do a couple of side gigs, or like other careers before they went into writing. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your writing career and how God led you into that or through that or to that.
yes. So I definitely always had a desire to write. I always loved to read. And it was around the age of 12 where I decided that what I wanted to be when I grew up was a novelist. And then as I kind of actually started to grow up, I realized, that's actually really hard. One,
Yeah.
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to actually write a full-length novel, but two, to get it published is just very difficult.
Mhm.
And then to actually like make money off of your writing is really hard. So I kind of pivoted and thought, you know what? Maybe I will work with writers rather than trying to be a writer myself. So I actually
Oh,
studied English in college, went on to get my master's in English and work in the publishing industry. So I actually worked in publishing for about 8 years. I worked with authors, kind of like a project manager, just kind of like working with them from contract all the way through to completion. So I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes, but in the back of my mind,
huh.
I was always like, but I want to write. I want to be a writer. And I was always writing on the side, but it was just kind of always on the side. It was a back burner thing.
Yeah.
And so I did publish, I actually have before the books that I have now with Bethany House. I do have 2 books published through Concordia Publishing House in contemporary fiction.
Okay.
This was really my first introduction into the life of an author. Um, and so I was working for Concordia at the time in a different department with their periodicals, but I knew the fiction editor and she knew me, knew that I had those projects and reached out to me. So that's kind of how my journey began.
Okay.
Very quickly realized that a lot goes into it. It's not just writing, it's receiving that editorial feedback, it's
Mhm.
polishing, it's marketing, it's all the things, so many hats that you have to wear.
Yeah.
Um, and then as I made the transition, so I started having my family and I made the transition to working from home and kind of working part-time, I thought, you know what, I'm going to really pour myself into writing and try to see if I can make a go of it and do this on a more full-time basis. And that's when I started pursuing an agent. I had the idea for my first book in this series, the Women of the Way series, back in 2016,
Oh,
and knew that I was going to be switching genres because I'd been writing contemporary up until that point. Was super intimidated, not only by historical fiction, but biblical fiction.
yeah.
We can talk about this later. But I was super intimidated by it. I came to the genre reluctantly. I like to say I kind of came to it kicking and screaming. I I
You're
didn't.
not the only one that ends up writing after a kicking and screaming episode.
Yes, I've always loved reading historical. I'd always loved reading biblical, but to write it felt super tricky and it felt super hard. And I thought, I want to write, but do I want to write this? And it was just ultimately an act of obedience because when God placed this first book on my heart in 2016, it was very strong. You get those feelings, a handful of times in your life, and this one was very strong and I could not ignore it. So, knew I needed an agent, knew I was getting myself into like I was just like, I need help. Like,
It's a
um,
different lane.
it's a different lane and knew I would be pitching to kind of larger publishers and just was like, I need some guidance. And so God really paired me with my agent, Cynthia Rookdy of Books and Such. We've been together since 2019, I think.
Okay.
And so it's just been a wonderful partnership. She's been such a champion for these books. And then, yeah, soon after that, well, it wasn't soon, it was a couple years after that, that we
Relative.
landed. Yeah, it's all a blur. I don't know anymore. That we landed with Bethany House and found a home for this series. And I honestly, it's been a whirlwind. I am so humbled and honored and thrilled and just all the things that I feel like God's given me these stories that I get to steward
Mhm.
and carry forward. I never could have imagined that I would be writing in this genre, let alone these women who are so intimately connected to Jesus. It's been intimidating and overwhelming from the beginning, but I kind of think that's the point. Anything we do that is for Him, for His glory, that is God honoring, it's going to be hard. It's going to
Mhm.
be hard. And I think the devil can really try to sneak in there and be like, because it's hard, maybe this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. It's too hard. You're not the one for the task. Did you mishear? Did you misunderstand? But I think because it's hard, gosh, God gets even more of the glory. He chooses the unlikely vessels. He chooses the unlikely people. He does that over and over again. And I'm so grateful that I get to be the one to tell these stories. I don't understand it. And I'm just so happy that I get to be on this wild journey with him. I feel just he's tied me to his hip um, every step of the way of this journey, and I'm really grateful that I get to tell these stories. So
Yeah.
kind of a
Well,
convoluted answer, but
well, and if anybody is watching this on YouTube, they can see the smile and the joy on your face. If they're only listening, they can't see that, but I think they can still hear it. And I love that you are so excited about this and sharing these stories. And the one that I got to read was Before the King, and this was Joanna's story. And why Joanna? She's actually the second in the series. If you want to tell us about the first one, and then we can talk about Joanna. But I am curious as to, how you go about picking the women or how God shows you which women. Uh,
yes, yes. So really it's Women of the Way, and the heart behind the series is to view Jesus through the eyes of some of his lesser known female followers. So
mhm.
right there, it narrows it down a little bit
Yeah, it
because
does.
you have some well-known women followers. I mean, the first one we normally think of is Mary Magdalene.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even Mary of Bethany is,
Mhm.
I would say, maybe a little more well-known than
Yeah.
Martha. And so I knew I wanted to choose kind of those unlikely women, the women that we don't go to first right away when
Mhm.
we think of the women
Yeah.
surrounding Jesus. Actually, out of the three, so it's a three-book series. Out of the three, my first is probably the most well-known, which is Martha of Bethany. And so book one is on her, book two is on Joanna, and book three is on the mother of the sons of thunder. So I do feel like these last two are a little of the more lesser known, but
Yeah.
Joanna truly is. She doesn't even have any words in scripture. There's no, like she
No.
is truly, she's mentioned by name twice in the Bible, both in the Gospel of Luke. And so but what we do know of her is so intriguing that I knew that's why I wanted to explore her. Because I feel like these women, their names are recorded in scripture. They really did know, love, and support Jesus during his earthly ministry. They're worth thinking about, they're worth researching. And
Yeah.
I think the beauty of it now is that there is so much research out there that we're not starting from scratch here. Like, you know what I mean? There's just so much research. And so I knew I wanted to explore Joanna because what we do know of her is so compelling. She's so different from a lot of Jesus's other disciples.
Hmm. Very
She
much.
is the wife of Herod Antipas's steward, which in my research of her, the word steward is better understood, and I'm going to maybe butcher the pronunciation of this, is like procreator. It's like the idea is someone who manages the financial affairs of someone else. And a lot of the scholarship seem to suggest that he was fairly high up. Like this is an esteemed position. He had a lot of control.
Yeah.
And so this woman, Joanna, she's a Jewish woman. Joanna is the feminine form of John. She is a Jewish woman married to this man who is high up in Herod Antipas's administration. Another interesting thing is her husband's name, Cusa, is actually, most of the scholars seem to agree, is Nabatean, which is Gentile. It is not, it is their neighbors to the south, what is it, southeast of them. It
Okay.
is not, he's a Gentile. So you have a Jewish woman married to a Gentile man high up in Herod's administration. And so I think as I began to really tiptoe into the deep waters of research, I just became more and more fascinated by her because
Yeah.
I wanted to know, like, man, and here she is supporting Jesus. And how did the other disciples view her? You have Simon the Zealot, you have like all of these, people who
Hmm.
like how did they view her? How did they receive her? So it just was fascinating. I think that's why I wanted to explore her. I think it's easy to gloss over their names when they don't have kind of those big moments. And Martha does get these big moments, right? We
Yeah,
got the
she does.
resurrection of her brother. She has these big moments.
Hmm.
Joanna, it's a little more subtle. But
Yeah.
as I started researching, it's like she's also there for the empty tomb. And it's just mind blowing to me. This brave woman who crossed all these boundaries to support Jesus also gets to be eyewitness to the empty tomb. And so these women, it's so easy to gloss over their names, but it's worth slowing down. It's worth seeing them as like these actual people who actually lived. And what can we learn from them and their
Yeah.
bravery and their contribution? So, yeah, that's again probably a long answer,
Yeah,
but
no, no, that's fine. And what I was thinking of was she was connected to the high court, and this was intrigue and politics, and she had to be very diplomatic and tread
yeah,
very carefully because you're like, okay, she was for her to be that close to Herod
yes,
and then be following Jesus enough for her name to be in scripture. That had to
yes,
be a very fine line that she had to walk because at times it was a extremely dangerous position for her to be
yes.
in, for her to be publicly acknowledging Jesus and supporting him enough to be named and yet be that close to Herod and in the middle of everything that happened. And I loved how you played that tension of being so incredibly close. And were there any things when you were exploring that or whatever that kind of jumped out at you or surprised you and taught you something?
Yeah, I think it was just I had to do a lot of research on Herod himself.
Hmm.
And because then that's actually where a lot of my research started. Is I started researching him. And it was just fascinating to me. It was just interesting to kind of see Herod's reaction to Jesus, which we do get some in scripture where he
Yeah.
viewed him as kind of this curiosity. And so as I was exploring that and thinking through like he had kind of this mocking asking, just this kind of curious, like, oh, like, who are you? Can you perform a miracle for me? And just like, how seriously did you just letting your imagination go? How seriously did he take did he take this? And just, I don't know, it was just interesting to consider that here is Joanna holding within her body, and this is another thing we know about her is that she was healed by Jesus in some way, because
Hmm.
Luke 8 3 tells us that these women were healed of Jesus in some way. So imagining Joanna holding Jesus's healing in her body, and if Herod knew that, right? Because we know that he healed people all walks
Yeah.
of life, that there were other people high up, like there were people, he healed a military official's son, like there's lots of people that he healed from all across the board.
Hmm.
So in Herod's mind, this is a curiosity, right? This is like
Yeah.
a dog and pony show. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, a miracle man.
Magic trick.
Yeah. And so it's like just this crazy like tension. And I have a scene, I don't want to give it away, but like I just loved exploring this idea of like to him, it's this magic show, and to her, it's life altering
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
just kind of playing this careful playing off of that, playing off of, is he just curious? And when does that curiosity tip into danger? Because he does, as we know, famously or infamously
Mhm.
behead Jesus's cousin. So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot going on there. But that was one of those
Yeah.
interesting
It's another one
pieces
of those
of,
examples of women. We really have far more influence than we give ourselves credit for sometimes. Um, for better or for worse.
right.
But you mentioned that Joanna was healed, and we don't know exactly what she was healed of or how.
Right.
But you explore some of that in the book, and we don't want to give it all away. But I did tell you that I wanted to dive into that a little bit more because as I was reading this, I was working on a show about the man at the pool of Bethesda, where
Yeah.
Jesus says, "Do you want to get well?" And in your scene, I used this scene with
Oh,
Joanna in my show and talking about this because to me it was so well, like we said, we don't know if that is exactly how it happened, but that scene where she had so much shame and guilt and almost didn't even want to receive it. And as you put it here, it said, in his pointed question, I recognized a new responsibility. Healing would require a new way of thinking of myself and of my past. And then she responds to him. She says, I think I need to be changed on the
mhm.
inside before I'm healed on the outside.
Yeah.
And I underline that. And I really had to just kind of sit with that in the moment and how much it speaks to us and that he can offer us healing. And we think of that man or well, of course, if you have some kind of infirmity, of course you want to be healed. That's a no-brainer.
Right.
But yet there's so much more to it. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit more how you came about without giving too much away, because I know
Yeah.
we don't want to give too much away. We want them to read the book and read all of it.
Yes, I love this question so much. I love this moment so much, and I love that you are connecting it to that pool, that moment where Jesus heals the man at the pool of Bethsaida, because I actually did draw on that when I was constructing this scene. Because
Mhm.
one of the things from the beginning that I wanted to do, having Jesus as a character is so tricky, and I wanted to keep scripture in his mouth. And so I was thinking like this tenderness of him saying, "Do you want to be healed?" I'm like, we've seen that before, haven't we, at the man with the pool of Bethsaida? And so that was part of me, my thought process going into this scene. And you're right. I think sometimes it is more comfortable to stay in that position of pain and hurt because it is familiar. It is familiar. And
Yeah.
we, even pain, it can become where this is just so familiar. I've learned to accommodate for this pain. I've learned to function with this pain. I
Mhm.
have learned to live life around this pain.
Mhm.
So if you come in and you completely heal this and you take this away, this is new. This is uncharted territory. There is a new responsibility stepping forward from this moment. And actually, I listened to, oh, and I wish I could name it, but Christy McClellan, I'm really a huge fan of her
Oh
work.
my gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yes, 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 yes.
She did a podcast. I don't know if it was on her Pearl's podcast, but
Girls?
she, yeah, maybe it might have been Pearl's.
Yeah.
And she talks about the man at the pool of Bethsaida, and she says that begging was a full-time profession. And this man had been begging for, I forget, is it 38 years? It's
38
a long
years.
time, 38
Yeah.
years. And
38.
so, quite literally, he would be having now to change his whole life.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing after this? And
With
kind
no
of
skill set, no other job to go back to.
yes, yes. And so in the case of Joanna, and I won't give away exactly what she's being healed from, but like in the case of Joanna, there's a history behind this wound that she carries that again she's learned to live with. And so is she has to let go of certain narratives that she's been holding on to, the narratives that says what I bear is what I deserve. I think I even put that in the scene is
Yeah.
like what I
Mhm.
bear is what I deserve. So if you're giving me mercy, I don't deserve that because this it's almost like I can feel better about what happened because I'm marked in this way. I'm wounded in this way. And she's got the survivor's guilt in the sense of like, I deserve this. And he's saying, but I will give mercy on whom I give mercy. And there's this humility of coming under that and being willing to then accept that complete forgiveness and being like, I will not be defined by that narrative that I've been playing in my mind, instead being defined by who he says that we are.
Mhm.
It's we're defined by his narrative, not our own. And so all of that, I'm just trying to like layer into this moment of this understanding of now we have to steward. It's a different kind of stewardship. We feel like we're stewarding this wound and this pain. How do we steward the healing
Yeah.
that comes on the other side of that and living forward from that and being able to release those old narratives that are filled with shame and live forward in his pronouncement of who we are. And I think in the next chapter it says for the first time she feels God's smile on her.
Hmm.
And it's just being, and I have felt that. I don't know if you felt that, those moments where it's like you actually like feel his smile. And as he says, he sings over us. He
Yeah.
sings over us.
Hmm.
And it's okay. It's like I think sometimes we feel like we've been saved, but we still somehow have to carry around the shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
We have to keep
somehow,
paying for stuff.
yeah. And it feels too scandalous not to. It
Hmm.
feels like we're getting away, like, it just feels like, but you mean I don't have to be ashamed, like at all? Like, but a little, right? Like a little. It's like, no. Like, there's so much freedom. And I think we don't even understand sometimes. We're so used to living with it, Lisa. We're so used to living with it that I think we don't recognize it sometimes.
Hmm.
We think that we're like, I'm not living in shame because it's wrapped around us like a cloak. It's
Yeah, it's so close.
comfortable.
We don't even see it anymore, and it's so normal. We just think that's
Yes.
normal. We just accept it.
Yes.
That's who we are. That's what our life is, and that we just have to push through. And
This
I
is just the
loved
way
it.
it is.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. And I
Yeah.
loved how after that moment she was able to start, instead of looking at all the things that she didn't feel like she should have or didn't like or didn't want, she was able to recognize that no. God has me here for a,
Yes.
and like you mentioned, stewarding the healing, stewarding the gifts that she did have that maybe she didn't appreciate, that there was a reason that God had her where she was and that she could live joyfully and
Yes.
fully and appreciate it. And, you know, we kind of go, oh, yeah, of course we want that. But sometimes we get so used to it and so
Yes.
uncomfortable that we go, "Oh yeah, we want it," but then we're not really willing to change our mindset, to
Yes.
go of some of those things that have been so comfortable, like Linus's dirty blanket. Put it in the washing
Yes.
machine and wash it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then, maybe we could, it can be there, but we don't have to keep holding on to all of that stuff, and that we can truly appreciate where we are and where God has us
Yes.
and live that out in a joyful way.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It's like the Israelites wanting to return to Egypt. And it's in such in human nature, right?
Mhm.
Going back to the comfortable rather than stepping into the unfamiliar with him. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything we mentioned, and I did, I'm so glad we got to talk about the healing thing. Is there anything else that you really hope that people will take away from this story with Joanna?
Yes. Yeah, it's, just this sense of the nearness of God. I was trying to show in the book just this relentless pursuit of God, and how close he is to us, even when we don't necessarily feel his presence, that actually doesn't change his presence.
Yes.
And so one of the things I'm exploring is like how can we be brave? And even in the prologue, she says, like, people call me brave, but I'm needy. I'm needy. And so it's like this idea of that the only way we can be brave is because of his presence. It's because he never leaves us. He never forsakes us. He is risen. He is alive. And that means he's right here, right now with us, empowering us. And so I hope that's the thing that people walk away from is just instead of that blanket of shame, that we can often just tug a little tighter, that we feel his delight, we feel his presence. That shame is replaced. It was nailed to the cross. He completely bore it for us. We do not live there anymore. And so that instead we would live forward with his presence as that cloak, as that constant in our life. And so, yes, the nearness of God fueling our bravery. I hope that people can take that away. And it's so applicable for us today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, and you mentioned when I asked the question of what are you passionate about sharing with the listeners, you mentioned yeah, that nearness of God, that you grew up in a very legalistic household or, childhood, and that really understanding how loved we are by God, just that made a world of difference. And so I love that. And I do really appreciate that relationship with Joanna's. At first, we'll say she was tentative, because she probably wasn't
Yes.
sure what the reception would be, knowing that she obviously was a very rich woman, well connected, and wondering about that, to a follower, a supporter, and one of the ones at the tomb, and so following along. It's a beautiful story, and as I mentioned, I did
Mm.
want to put it down. In fact, I procrastinated on some other things, and then had to stay up really late just so I could finish the book.
Oh,
Um,
I love that.
no, but I loved
Weird.
having the excuse for that. And I know this is obviously a passion of yours, to share these stories and to share your heart and to write and to give him the glory. I love to ask people, what would you say to encourage someone else to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart?
Yes. I would say start by like truly just taking your eyes off of yourself. I think we get in our way so many times,
Mhm.
especially as women. I think we are very big picture people, like we see it all, right? It's hard to compartmentalize. At least in my brain, it's very hard to compartmentalize. And we see it all and we see all the possibilities. We see all the roadblocks. We see all the various possible outcomes of how this could end very poorly. Like
Yeah.
and so I think it's just getting out of our own head and just saying, start with pinning your eyes upon Jesus. Really, truly, I know it sounds a little like a Sunday school answer, but start by pinning your eyes there. Um, because I think as we truly keep our eyes pinned there and we keep in step with his spirit, we will start to feel those nudges more. We will start to feel there is confidence that comes when you are walking in step with the spirit. It's hard to explain. I mean, you just need to stay at his hip. Just stay at his hip and look at his face. And I think that will give you the confidence to then take that next step. And often when we are hesitant, it's because we have imposter syndrome. Don't get me started. We have our eyes here. I'm pointing to myself, sorry. We have our eyes, we
Oh
have
no,
our
I resemble
eyes
that remark.
Yeah, we have our eyes pointed inward.
Yeah.
We have our eyes pointed outward, looking at other people and worrying about their reactions. There's so much peace and confidence to be found if we can keep tugging our gaze back to Christ. And that's just do that and then ask him to give you what you need for the next step.
Mhm.
Maybe not the fifth step and the seventh step, but the next step. And just know when you go to bed, there will be manna in the morning. There will be manna in the morning. When you wake up, he will give you exactly what you need. And don't worry about the manna that is for the next day after that. Trust him for the manna tomorrow. He's going to give it. I promise you that. He's going to give it. And then you just slow yourself down to his pace and you wait for that next manna. And before you know it, day after day after day of has gone by, step after step has gone by, and you are way over here. And you started way over there.
Hmm.
And you don't know how it happened. You're like, what in the world?
One step at a time, one
And
step at
it's
a time.
him.
Yeah.
It's him. He took you there each step of the way.
Yes.
So,
Very much so. Well, Heather, thank you. Thank you so much. And you mentioned the manna, and I'm thinking of Christy McClellan and
yeah.
manna thing. It's what is it? I mean, that's what the name manna was, is what is it? So sometimes we're like, God, what is this?
Yeah.
But I'm going to trust you anyway, and I will take that step. I may not trust it, I may not understand it, but he will give us what you need. And I think it's beautiful. And Heather, I so appreciate your spending the time with us today. And if someone wants to get a hold of this book, some of your other books, connect with you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yes, I would love to connect with everyone. My website is a great place. It is hmkstories.com. You can find more information about my books. I do have a YouVersion plan for each of my books. I have other free resources on there, so definitely check that out. I have a newsletter that goes out once a month, and a free devotional if you sign up for that. So all of that can be accessed on my website at hmkstories.com.
Okay, very good. And so if they haven't had enough of Joanna, they can go to your website and get a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, well, very good. Well, Heather, thank you so much for your willingness to dive in and to share these stories and bring these characters to life and really help us understand them in the humanness, because they aren't just names in the Bible, they're real people.
Yes.
And thank you
Yes.
for really kind of bringing them to life. That's the best way I can think of to say that, and to sharing their stories with us and taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I've enjoyed our conversation so much.